All right, you guys, in this section, we're going to be learning how to solve radical equations. Okay. So when we are solving radical equations, there's a couple of steps that we're going to want to follow. Okay. So the first step that we want to look at is that we want to isolate the radical expressions if necessary. So remember, isolate means to get it by itself. Okay. Then step 2, you're going to look at the index. Okay. So remember, the index, if you have a radical, the index is the number that sits on the hook. Okay. So we're going to identify what it is. If the index is a 2, that means that you're going to raise both sides of your equation to the second power. When you do this, the power and the index will cancel each other out, and you'll be left with what's underneath the radical, the radicand, and the rest of your equation. So you're going to do the same thing. If your index is 3, you're going to raise both sides to the third power. If your index is 4, you're going to raise both sides of the equation to the fourth power, so on and so forth. So once you identify your index, you're going to raise your equation to that same power, okay? Then step 3, once the radical sign goes away, then you're going to solve the equations. And then step 4, which is the most important step, you're going to check your answers in the original equation to make sure that it makes your equation true, okay? So let's look through a couple of examples. So this first one, it says solve the radical equation, the square root of x equals 9, okay? So step 1 told us to get the radical by itself, to isolate it. So if we look at this equation, the square root of x is already on the left side of the equation by itself already. So we're good, okay? The next thing we need to identify is the index, okay? The index is the number that sits on the hook on the radical sign. Okay. If there's no number written there, it's understood to be 2. So our index is 2. Okay. Which means that we're going to raise both sides of our equation to the second power. Okay. When we do that, the radical sign is going to cancel out. So we're going to be left with what's underneath, the radicand. So we have x equals, and then we're going to square the right-hand side. So 9 squared is 81. Okay. Then we will solve what's left. So x is already by itself. Our equation is already completely solved, so we're good. So the last thing that we have to do is we have to check our solutions to make sure they make our equation true. So that means we said that x is equal to 81. Let's plug that back into the original to see if we get that. So the square root of 81 equals 9. Well, the square root of 81 is 9, and 9 equals 9, so that's true. So we get to keep it. So our solution is x equals 81, okay? All right, let's see if we're correct. And we are. Awesome. All right, let's look at a second example. All right, so they want us to solve this radical equation again. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, we need to make sure that our radical is isolated, okay? It is. Our radical is on the left side of the equation by itself. Then we need to identify what the index is, okay? So the index in this problem is 3, okay? So since the index is 3, that means that I'm going to raise both sides of the equation to the third power. Oops. All right. When we raise the left-hand side to the third power and that index of 3 are going to cancel each other out. So we're going to be left with what's underneath, which is x equals -4 to the third power. So -4 times -4 is 16, and 16 times -4 is -64. Okay. So we need to do the most important step. So we've checked to see if it solves any farther. It doesn't. X is isolated, so we're good. So we need to check our solution. All right, so we're going to plug that in, the cube root of -64, and that should equal -4. If you guys are not sure, remember you can always plug it into your calculator. The cube root of -64 is -4, and -4 equals -4, so we're good. We get to keep that answer. So our answer is x equals -64. All right, let's see if we're right. And we are. Cool. All right, let's try this example. Okay. So like our steps say to isolate the radical first. So we have the square root of x plus 4 equals 7. So right now it's not isolated. That 4 is on the left-hand side with the square root of x. So it has to move first before we can do anything. So to move it to the other side, we're going to subtract 4 equals 3. All right, now it's isolated. So once it's isolated, then we have to choose or define what the index is. So the index on this problem, all right, is 2. Okay, so there's no number written here. So it's understood to be a square root. So our index is 2, which means that we're going to raise both sides of the equation to the second power. So when we do that, the square root and the square cancel each other out. So we have x equals, and 3 squared is 9. And remember, you always have to check your answers. So we're going to plug that in. We have the square root of 9 plus 4 equals 7. The square root of 9 is 3 plus 4. And 3 plus 4 is 7. So we're good. We get to keep it. So x equals 9 is our answer. Awesome. Let's see if we're right. Yes. Cool.